Chapter 6. Relax, let go, let God. One of the most important errors to be unlearned is the idea that religion is a thing in itself, something you pick up or lay down, something you subscribe to or a church you join, something you study and memorize by rote, and along with that, the idea that prayer is a prescribed ritual like the grand ceremonies of a lodge. We have handed down religious teachings as ready-made, cut and dried propositions. I call them custom-made convictions. As part of this scenario, truth is given as infallible. There is nothing more to be said. There is nothing to do but believe it. All through our lives, instead of pursuing the spiritual quest and working towards truth, we simply work from truth or what we have been told is truth. But an infallible standard is a temptation to have a mechanical faith. Thus, we have tended to make one great act of faith and then have done with it. We are saved. We join the church. It's all over. This has left us with imposing temples and cathedrals with gaudy interiors. God is somewhere in the back of the altar, dispensed in small portions by priests, ministers, and rabbis. No doubt many of us have cried out with Emerson, "Why can't we have a first-hand and immediate experience with God?" Thus, in this study, we are dealing with prayer, not as a religious act or a theological exercise, but as a personal experience of oneness, something that we do, not for God, but in and for ourselves, something we do to lift ourselves to a transcendental awareness of God. We might say that prayer is a gesture, a personally symbolic act. But what does it mean? We make many gestures. Consider the gesture of extending the hand in friendship to a stranger. Originally, this meant to show that you were unarmed, that you came in peace. People took each other's hand in a bargain that they would not harm one another. Of course, today, most handshakes are mere formalities. Consider the folded hands of prayer. It is a lovely symbol depicted by artists to connote piety. But what does the gesture really mean? To many persons, it is a sign of entreaty, a gesture of begging, pleading, interceding. But actually, the folded hands together throughout the many religions of the world imply unity, a sense of wholeness. It is the Oriental namaskar, the divinity within me that salutes the divinity within you. It is important, however, to get the awareness that the gesture of prayer is not directed toward anyone or anything outside of oneself. To repeat, prayer is not something you do for God. Your words are not for God's ears. Your gestures are not for his eyes. Your Father knoweth what things you have need of before you ask him. Matthew 6, verse 8. In the gesture, the words, the form, whatever else your prayer involves, you are seeking to realize your wholeness, your transcendence. We will say again, and we will repeat it over and over throughout this discourse. Prayer is not conditioning God to your needs, but conditioning your needs to the activity of God. We don't want to seem repetitious, but it is vital that you catch this point. Prayer is not trying to reach God or inform God or tell God all about your troubles. It is to know God as the infinite resource within and to expand your self-realization. Challenge yourself to become aware of the presence of God. One truth teacher adds confusion rather than clarity when in describing the effects of prayer. He says, and he says it often, when you get the awareness of truth and speak the healing word, pop, God comes in. But God doesn't come in, for God never went out. When you pray, God doesn't go anywhere or come from anywhere, and you don't go anywhere. You simply remove the blinders from your eyes. You become aware that you are an expression of God and that God is a deeper dimension of yourself expressing himself as you. There is no need to bargain with God, to coax a reluctant God to work a miracle on your behalf. If this is your purpose, then, as Jesus told his disciples, you ask wrong. James 4, verse 6. God knows your needs, and God is the answer. As Tennyson so aptly puts it, closer is he than breathing, and nearer than hands and feet. What you need is to forget how worried and confused you are, and remember how wonderful you are. Does that surprise you? It certainly goes against the traditional prayer attitude that you are a miserable sinner. It is interesting that the root word from which prayer is derived, palal, from the ancient Sanskrit, which literally means judging oneself to be wondrously made. A new horizon opens to those who begin to think of prayer as knowing how wonderful they are, how creative, how at one with the divine flow. So you see, true prayer is essentially wrapped up in the psalmist's call to be still and know that I am God. Psalm 46, verse 10. This is really what it is all about. How simple, yet we make it so complex. The first step is to relax the involuntary tensions of the mind and lift your thoughts to synchronize with the steady flow of transcendence, to affirm how wonderful you are, how beautifully created you are. Now again, here is your reminder. God can do no more for you than he can do through you. There is no way that your prayer can be answered unless you change the level of your thinking. Paul says, be transformed by the renewal of your mind. Romans 12, verse 2. The root of this phrase in the Greek is the word metanoia, literally meaning to think differently. In short, if you want to be healthy, you must stop thinking of yourself as sick. If you want to be prosperous and successful, you must renounce the practice of thinking of yourself as a failure. Now, make no mistake about it, this is not easy. It calls for a disciplined effort to let go of attachments to the past, to clear out of the mind the prejudices, the pessimism, the self-pity, to renounce gripes, grudges, and grouches, to relinquish all hates and hurts, all false beliefs and foolish fears, all ideas of lack and limitation. Traditionally, medicine may do a pretty good job of curing your symptoms, but you can only be healed causally by making a concerted effort at mental house cleaning. Then consciously letting go and letting God. The words cure and healing are used in this way purposely. An aspirin may cure a headache, but healing can only come through the release of tension and by dissolving the attitudes or emotions that are responsible for the tension. In the early days of the American Revolution, one man was overcome with fear that the British Army would overrun his village and subject it to unspeakable indignities. He wisely secreted a boat at the river, hiding it on the bank near some bulrushes, and one night he heard the frantic cry, "The British are coming!" According to his carefully formulated plan, he dashed out of his house, ran to the river, and jumped into his boat. There seemed to be a strong current, but he rowed confidently, feeling smug about his preparedness. It was a dark and foggy night. He rowed all night until exhaustion set in. Then, as the sun rose and the fog lifted, he suddenly became aware that he was right where he had started, for he had forgotten to cut the boat free from its mooring. It is an important lesson. You can't have harmonious relationships and hold on to your resentment too. You can't hold on to your anger and bitterness and still have a healthy heart and a settled stomach. Jesus makes it very clear that you can't expect God to help you or heal you unless you make room for the answer to your prayers by letting go of your negative feelings. He says, if you come to the altar with your gift, symbolizing your prayer effort, and there remember that your brother has aught against you, and perhaps you have aught against your brother, leave there the gift and go and be reconciled with your brother. And then come and offer your gift. Matthew 5, verses 23 and 24. In other words, if you are blocking the flow of life or substance or love by your resentment or unforgiveness, not even God can break through with the good you desire. That may shock you to hear that there is something God cannot do. For haven't we been told that God can do all things? But you see, God is not someone who works on you from the outside. God is the dynamic potential of your being. And again, God can do no more for you than He can do through you. Emmett Fox says, when you hold resentment against anyone, you are bound to that person by a cosmic link, a really rough metal chain. You are tied by a cosmic tie to the very thing you hate. The thing you hate is inexorably a part of your consciousness. The one person in the whole world whom you most dislike is the very one to whom you are attaching yourself by a hook that is stronger than steel. And don't delude yourself that when you pray, you bypass all this and achieve God's forgiveness. In the Lord's Prayer, Jesus says, forgive us our debt, as we also have forgiven our debtors. God forgives as we forgive. But that is not entirely correct. For God doesn't really forgive, because there is no unforgiveness in Him. God is love. And through the attitude of forgiveness, we open ourselves to that love. Love is always and eternally present, but we block it with our resistance. Jesus' statement is like saying, the sun comes streaming in the window when we raise the blinds. But of course, we know that the sun doesn't really come in. It simply shines, and we accept the light and warmth as we eliminate the barrier. There is a tendency to rush pell-mell into prayer without adequate preparation. Like the man with his escape boat, we neglect to cut ourselves free from that which binds. Let go. This is the first step in scientific prayer. There are 3 important steps which we will outline in this chapter and the next 2. The second step is going within to experience your oneness with infinite power in a process called meditation or the silence. And the third step is the projection of that power through affirmation of truth or spiritual treatment. The interesting thing is that many times, just in the process of letting go, we open the answering flow immediately, and the problem is solved or the condition healed with no further prayer effort required. As we pointed out earlier, there is a cosmic counterpart, an infinite mind to every human need, along with a desire to fill that need. The confusion of praying to God in prayer book language and a pleading tone is normally counterproductive, serving to block the flow rather than open the way to prayer's answer. There is an old-time religious hymn, "Take it to the Lord in prayer." Take all your troubles, your woes, your anxieties to God, we were told by the preachers. However, when we catch the idea and the feeling of the transcendent nature of God, a new and startling realization dawns. Don't take it to the Lord at all. God doesn't want your negatives. God is light, and in that light there can be no darkness of limitation. We are told, "Thou art of purer eyes than to behold evil." Habakkuk 1, verse 13. It may be helpful to take inventory of your needs, even to make a list of the troubles I've seen. This list, however, is not for God, but to remind you of what you are holding on to. Once the list is complete, then its purpose has been fulfilled. Lay it aside. Better yet, put it into the fireplace where it will be consumed. Watch the paper be swallowed up in flames. Get the sense of freedom as you consciously let go. Now you are ready to let God. Jesus said, "Do not judge by appearances, but judge with righteous judgment." John 7, verse 24. A technique for dealing with appearances, as suggested by Emily Cady in her classic work, Lessons in Truth, is denial. There is no absence of life, substance, or intelligence anywhere. There are no God empty spots. I have no fear. These are sample denials. By making statements like these, you tend to correct your perspective, seeing beyond the appearance. However, there is a lot of confusion about this. To deny a thing does not mean to refuse to deal with it. Rather, it is the most effective way of dealing with it. When you have a problem, don't say there is no problem, but rather there are no unanswerable problems. You are denying that the appearance tells the whole story, so you tell the whole story, which is the basis of an affirmation or treatment. The denial is a letting go of the shackles of limitation. The interesting thing is that when you have a concern over some difficulty which has caused you to pray about it, you approach your prayer with a built-in anxiety or tension. Thus, the very first step in the science of prayer is the conscious act of letting go. If you begin with a judgment about the severity of the problem, you are saying, in effect, "Boy, this is going to be a difficult one." You may clench your fist and tense your body. It will be very much like driving with the brakes on. So, settle with this attitude of hopelessness. Deny it. Let it go. Prayer is no time for physical tension. If your hands are taut, that is a signal that you need to let go. You may say, "I have prayed all night about this problem," but you are deluding yourself. That was not prayer. You were holding on to the problem all night. You may have commenced your prayer with "Dear Lord" and concluded it with "Amen," but you probably had an orgy of worry and self-pity in between. Let go and let God. It is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Luke 12, verse 32. The whole universe is conspiring to establish you in health and harmony. Let go and let it unfold. The universe is calling you to wholeness. Prayer does not make answers. It simply accepts answers that are always within. Before they call, I will answer. Isaiah 65, verse 24. Prayer is not an attempt to get through to God, to get your request on the spindle off his desk, so to speak. This is not what prayer is about. The need is to relax the involuntary tensions of the mind and to let go and give way to the life and substance of spirit. It is not as much a thing to do as it is a thing to let be done. Relax, let go, and let God. We say these words so easily, but we must realize that it is a depth uncovered. Just relax and let go. God, the creative flow, is realized in you. Just let it happen. If you keep emphasizing how terrible things are, how bad you feel, how much you hurt, there will be no help, no communion, no awakening to the flow. Prayer is centering your attention on the truth of wholeness. This may well be your biggest problem, not the conditions or persons that are harassing you, but your tendency to hold on to them. Freedom calls for a dramatic act of letting go. Here is an illustration that may help you get the picture. An interesting system has been used for capturing monkeys in the jungles of Africa. The goal is to take the monkeys alive and unharmed for shipment to the zoos of America. In an extremely humane way, the captors use heavy bottles with long, narrow necks into which they deposit a handful of sweet-smelling nuts. The bottles are dropped on the jungle floor, and the captors return the next morning to find the monkeys trapped next to each bottle. How is this accomplished? The monkey, attracted by the aromatic scent of the nuts, comes to investigate the bottle, puts his arm down the long, narrow neck, closes his hand around the nuts, and is trapped. The monkey can't take its hand out of the bottle as long as it's holding the nuts, but it is unwilling to open its hand and let them go. The bottle is too heavy to carry away, so the monkey is trapped. We may smile at the foolish monkeys, but how often we hold on to our problems as tenaciously as the monkeys hold on to the nuts in the bottle. And so, figuratively, we carry our bottle around with us, feeling very sorry for ourselves and begging for sympathy from others, even from God. I may go see an analyst or a spiritual counselor, dragging my bottle with me. I take my seat, lifting the bottle onto my lap and say, "I have this problem, see?" The counselor tries to help correct my thinking, and possibly we conclude the interview with a time of prayer. I expressed appreciation, saying I have been helped. Then I pick up my bottle and leave, dragging the bottle behind me. All the counseling in the world cannot help me until I let go of the nuts. I may complain that the problem is with people or conditions, the way people treat me at work, or they fired me without notice. But in every case, the trouble is not what happened to me. It is what I am doing about what is happening in me. We are told, "God hath made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions." Ecclesiastes 7, verse 29. God made the monkey to climb and run free, but the monkey decided to clasp its hands on the nuts, and it was trapped. God made you whole and healthy, but in some way, beyond your conscious awareness, you may have frustrated the divine flow, and thus you may be holding onto your problem. You will not let it go. The monkey was always a free monkey, but it was bound by its failure to understand itself. At any time, it had the power to say to its hand, "Open." And you have the power to say to yourself, "I let go of fear and worry and resentment and regret. I let it all go." Thus, at any time you feel that you are acting like a monkey, you have the power to give way, to let go, and let flow. Here is an imaging exercise for you to work with. Take another inventory, listing all the challenges, conflicts, and difficulties that you may have. Let them be symbolized by the nuts in the bottle with the long, narrow neck. Feel your hand clasping a nut. Feel the frustration and pain of entrapment. Ask yourself, am I content to have this bottle? Do I really want to be free? There is only one way. Open your hand and feel your arm slipping out of the bottle. You are free. You might say, "I let go of resistance, resentment, and anxiety." Let it all go. There is no way to gain freedom unless you let go. Even God cannot set you free unless you follow the freeing call to let go. Face forward and let go. Relaxation is a vital step in getting into a prayer consciousness. It is the first step in scientific prayer. Prayer is not a physical activity, but if we are trapped in a body consciousness, our way is effectively blocked. It is important to establish yourself in the feeling of dominion. You are not your body. You have a body, and the you that has the body has the power to master the body. Here is an exercise for establishing the feeling of dominion. Tell your right arm to rise and then to fall. Then the left arm, rise, fall. It is one of the greatest lessons you can learn, and so very simple. Can you sense the impact? You see, you can control your body. You are in charge. Now, have a drill in relaxation as training and a vital preparation for prayer. Sit in a chair, feet flat on the floor, body erect. Tell your hands to relax. Let them drop loosely in your lap. Then, working progressively from the top of your head to the tip of your toes, go through all the parts of your body. Your forehead, your eyes, nose, mouth, chin, neck, etc. Saying in order, relax and let go. Eventually get the sense that your body is as limp as a dish rag, falling in a heap on the floor. Just rest in that state long enough to feel a sense of dominion over the tensions of the body and a symbolic sense of freedom over the anxieties and frustrations of the mind. If you are still enough in mind and body, you experience the inspiration of the Almighty, saying to you figuratively, if not actually, "You are my beloved child. You are loved. You are free. You are whole. You are creative. You are successful." Remember, it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Luke 12, verse 32. The activity of God is always seeking to heal you, to bless you, to fill all your vessels with good. When you get yourself out of the way, the divine flow does its perfect work. However, it is not that you stir God to activity. You simply become receptive to the divine activity that is always present as a presence. It might be good to emphasize the connection between the words present and presence. The presence of God is present, ever present, omnipresent. The presence can never be absent, though at times we may be absent in consciousness. As Emerson says, if we get away from the preconceived anthropomorphic notions, really break their hold on our mind, then God fires us with his presence. The words of Meister Eckhart speak dynamically to our need to let go as the basic step in the process of scientific prayer. He writes, God expects but one thing of you, and that is that you should come out of yourself insofar as you are a created being, and let God be God in you.